Hello there and welcome to the next QGIS Open Day session. For this session we have Azile, who is from the University of Pretoria. She's doing her Masters in Geospatial Analysis and so on, and she will be taking us through a session on data visualization. Over to you, Azile.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Okay, so just to start us off, I will be going through some data visualization in QGIS. Nothing too intense, just a little bit of introductions on different methods of data visualization, how they're applicable in real life, as well as some examples that people in industry have done. Okay, so I just want to start off with the importance of data visualization. So the reason why it's important to visualize any data that we have is that in this day and age, there's sort of an influx of data that is available to us. So representing your data in a way that is accessible to the ordinary person, your layman, is important because it gives you a very important perspective on your data. It allows an individual to interact with your data. It also allows your data to tell a story. So it's not just sitting there in a table. It does something. It's interactive, and it also just saves time. So rather than going through a CSV of 500 rows, you could have a map or you could draw a chart. So just to start us off, the plugins that are going to be applicable with the analyses and visualizations that we're going to do today are QGIS to 3JS, which is applicable to 3D maps, MapTiler, which is for vector tiles, and for MapTiler, you would need to make a MapTiler account because you need an API key to link it to your QGIS. And then lastly, it's QGIS to web, which then allows you to export your map to a web map. So we'll start with 3D models. So 3D models are exactly as it sounds. It's a 3D representation of something that would otherwise have been 2D. And the benefits of having 3D models is if you're anything like me and you don't have a mind's eye, it really helps you visualize the spatial depth of a certain area or of a certain idea. And the 3D models also help us with analysis as well as 3D fly-throughs. So why would you use this? So if you are an urban planner or you work in city planning or even marketing for that matter, and you want a stakeholder to see maybe a building that you want to build and what it would look like in the general area, then you could use 3D maps. Or if you want to visualize the terrain in 3D, you could also use a 3D map for that. So we can see here on the right, we've got a mountain, which is then represented in 3D. And then some real life examples of these 3D models. On the left, we've got a 3D model that someone from Mapbox made in lower Manhattan in New York. And we can see here, the higher the building is, the darker the color is, the lower the building is, the lighter the color is, and we can sort of see where the gaps in the buildings are. So if maybe someone wanted to create a new building, or if they were interested in making a newer green space, they'd know exactly where the spaces within the city are. And on the right, we've got a mountain. We can see all the ridges and the valleys and the terrain and the general layout of this island. Okay, so next we'll talk about vector versus raster, and this will link very nicely to the vector tiles. So what is the difference between vector and raster? Raster is generally used in traditional maps, so it'll be your aerial imaging that you see when you get a normal map. And the downside for raster maps is that it can't be customized. Once something is on this image, it's on there. And if you want to zoom it in or zoom it out, basically you just are you zooming out or zooming in pixels, as opposed to vector, which is the data equivalent of these image tiles. So there are points, lines, and polygons, and these points, lines, and polygons are customizable to whatever your desired outcome is. And the benefit to vector tiles is that it's a smaller data size. So as opposed to having 1 gig of raster image files, you'll just have a smaller vector tile, which you can customize to what you want. So the benefits of using vector tiles is that you are able to print maps in very high quality data, because the points, lines, and polygons that are on these vector tiles can't be pixelated. So they stretch with whatever your zoom level is, for example. And another benefit is that you can alter existing data. So if you have a map from Mapbox, for example, or from QGIS or Google, and you want to remove all the roads and all the buildings and just look at where your water bodies are, you are able to remove all those elements and still keep everything else that you do want. And another benefit is that it's extremely customizable. So if you want to have purple lakes and pink roads on your map, you can do that in using vector tiles. And why you would use this is if you want to have a very specific outcome that you have in your mind, but the raster image doesn't exist, you can create the vector tiles for yourself. So here's just a real life example of someone who had altered some vector tiles. So on the top left, we have Roy Lichtenstein's pop art. It was the inspiration for these maps of San Diego and London, I think, that were then customized to look like pop art. So this is just one of the very many cool things that you can do with vector tiles, which I will show you a bit later. Next, we have heat maps. And the benefits of heat maps is that it creates instant visual clarity through clustering. So if you have a heat map and you don't necessarily know what the information is about, you as a person can instantly see, oh, a lot of something happens here, or a lot of something happens here. So on the right-hand side, I've just got Strava data of, you know, all the people that have been exercising, and you can see exactly where the most people have been using this app. Okay. And why you would use this is it simplifies the visualization process. So there's not too much thinking that goes into exactly what this information is. You just need to know what it's about, but you can see everything. And heat maps are mostly used in crime prevention or crime hotspots, as well as climate change. So here, the University College London did a study on crime where they were looking at what density people on cars, motorbikes, scooters, and mopeds get robbed within the specific area. And we can see, using these heat maps, it's very easy to see which areas you should avoid and which areas you should not avoid, especially if you're familiar with the area. Okay, so next I will just walk us through a video showing how to basically load your how to load a data set into QGIS and how to manipulate it, so that we can just practice some of these visualization tools that I just spoke about. So just start us off. You get everything ready, you open your QGIS, and to start, if you don't have your plugins, then you should probably load your plugins. You click on plugin, install, and a window pops up. And what you can do is just search for the plugin that you want to use specifically. There are many different plugins. So the QGIS to Web, QGIS 3JS, and MapTiler. So what I want to start off with now is just showing you how to work with vector tiles. So once your plugin is loaded, you would link your access key to MapTiler. And once that is linked, all your maps should pop up, and you can just pick one, whichever map you would like to work with. Here I picked basic. You right click that and you add it as a vector. Okay. Then once this is loaded, you can zoom in to your desired area, and I zoom into Pretoria in South Africa because that is an area that I am familiar with. And we can see here that it has points, lines, polygons. It also has labels. And now we'll go to Map Tiler, Planet, and we'll right click there and go to Properties. And now what I want to do here is I just want to show you exactly all the layers that exist within this vector tile. And Map Tiler groups them very nicely for you. So you can see land cover, you can see transport. So what I want to do is change the color of the roads. So I'll select major roads and change the color just to a red, light red color, just so you can see exactly what happens when you do change your roads. So all the major roads within this area that I'm looking at here change to this red color. And if you want to change the water bodies as well, then I'll look for the label that says water, right, double click that, and I should be able to just make it a darker blue and apply that. So we can see here we have red roads and very dark blue water bodies. And just to show you that you can remove anything that you don't want, so you just click on label, and now we are removing everything except for an outer boundary for the country as well as the provinces. So I'm going to remove all of these, and this just goes to show how customizable this vector tile is. And then again, we will just change this to a darker color. And apply that. So as soon as we apply, we can see that everything, all the layers that we removed have now been removed. So now we're looking at the extent of South Africa. Okay. And what I want to do is I just want to add a vector layer. And this vector layer will be of health sites within South Africa. So pharmacies, hospitals, dentists, doctors' offices, all of that. It's not a perfect data set, but we'll work with it. And here we have loaded all the health sites in South Africa. And now what I want to start off with is just creating clusters of all of these points, just so it's not overwhelming when you look at it. So we'll right click, go to properties, and we'll go to symbology, and we'll say point cluster. So now what I want to do is configure the symbol. So here what I'll do is I'll just play around with the colors and the font size, just to see exactly what happens when I change what. So I increase my font size, and I can see, okay, no, the font is a bit too big, so then I'll go back to my font size, make that a bit smaller, see what that looks like. And I want to cluster my points a bit more. So you go to distance and you change that, and you can sort of see how you got less points and more numbers. Okay, so now we'll change it back. Yeah. And now I configure symbol, and I want to make my symbols a bit bigger so that the font sort of fits, and you just play around with that and see exactly how everything works. And again, go configure symbol. You can change your font size. So you just basically play around and see exactly what you want, how you want your map to look. Okay, so I end up settling on 3.5. And you click OK. And this is your cluster of all the health sites in South Africa. So if you zoom out, they cluster a bit more. If you zoom in, then you see more points. Okay. So you can sort of see they're a bit clustered around the Gauteng province and the Western Cape. So now we'll do a heat map. Again, you go to symbology and you click heat map, and we'll choose the color green. And if you click apply with the heat map, you can see that it's quite opaque. So we want to make it a bit more transparent so that we can see our base map. So we'll put it at about 50%. Okay. Then we want to increase the radius of our heat maps. Okay. So with the vector tiles, sometimes you need to move it around a bit before they load properly. And you can see, again, I'm just showing you that where the clusters are. So if you zoom in more, you can see where the clusters are. So all the metros, so Port Elizabeth, East London, Durban, have clusters, but not as much as the Gauteng province and Western Cape, Cape Town specifically. Okay, so if you zoom out and you zoom in, you see different levels of your data of this heat map. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our attribute table and we're going to select all the fields that we want to see. So what we're going to do now, we're going to export to a web map. So anything that you don't want to see in your web map, you can hide it under attribute form. So we're going to hide all of these attributes. And it's helpful to do it here because when you eventually enable your pop-up, you don't want anything extra that is useless information. Okay, so then you go and basically hide everything. And then under alias, you can change the names. So alias is basically like a label. You can go change the name there. Okay. So it's a lot of different attributes that we're hiding. And then just to double check everything. Okay. So now we hide all of those. And then we go to fields. So we can select all the attributes that we want to see on our web map. And here under aliases, I've changed all the ones that I do want to see. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give our web map a title. So we go to properties, and then we go to general, and we're going to add a project title. So health sites in South Africa. And this just gives us a title for our web map. Okay. So now we're just going to convert our heat map to just a normal map with points. So we'll go back to properties. And then under heat map, we'll make it all the way opaque so that we can see all our points. And then under heat map, we will change it to categorize. So I want to show the types of health facilities. So in my attribute table, that's amenities. So we can see here we've got clinics, dentist offices, doctor's offices, hospitals, as well as pharmacies. Okay, so those are all the different points that I want to show. So I say okay, and I open that. And looks a bit chaotic, but there's a method to madness. Okay, so now we want a base map. And if you don't have any XYZ tiles loaded, you can just go to XYZ, say new connection, and then you can just Google XYZ tiles in QGIS. And what you do is you will just name it what you want to name it, and you paste the URL that you find on the internet over here, and it's easy as clicking OK. And you will have your XYZ tiles loaded. So I've got mine preloaded. So we're just going to select the Stamen Toner Light, Stamen Toner Light, which is just a white XYZ tile. And this is what our map is looking like now. And what we want to do now is we want to export this to a web map. So you're going to make sure that you've selected all the layers that you want to see. You want to enable pop-ups, and we had selected these 4 fields, so we want to see them in inline labeling. And then in terms of, and then we select leaflet at the bottom, and then in terms of appearance, we want our layers to be collapsed. And we want to show pop-ups when you hover on a point and the extent. And this you can save locally as a GeoJSON or as any other type of format that you want. And you can preload it on the right over here. And when you hover above a point, you can see the information that we enable in the pop-up. Okay, so you export that, and now you've got a web map. And this is useful for if you want to make a web map and load it onto a drive, for example, or onto a server and then put it on a website. Okay, so now I'm just going to move around and see exactly what these points are. The starter set is not perfect. So you can sort of see here, we've got different hospitals and different pharmacies. So it's a Clicks pharmacy, and it's got all the opening times over here. We've got another pharmacy, doctor's office. Okay, so again, we can see the clustering in and around Gauteng. But yes, so that is the demo. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks so much. That was actually fantastic. There's been a lot of comments and talk on your demo. Fantastically interesting. I'm sure Chris has a couple of questions for us to get us started off.
Yeah, I do. Here are some of the questions. Some of the questions are, how do you prevent the oversimplification of the data in the heat maps due to scale?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I didn't hear you.
How do you prevent the oversimplification of the data in the heat maps due to scale?
Well, I would just make sure that my extent is to the point where you have the amount of data that the level of detail of data that you actually want to see.
All right.
Thank you.
And then I think there are 1 or 2 more questions. How do you do transparency on the symbology generated heat maps?
Okay, so the transparency is in the same place for all of them. So you will just scroll down to the bottom, and so the same way you did for heat map, and then where it says opacity, you just move the scale to how transparent you actually want it to be.
All right.
What if you want to only make
one?
Sorry, what if you only want to make sort of one thing transparent, but you have a gradient?
You want to make one element transparent.
Yes, yes.
So if you want to say make doctor's offices transparent.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Just as an example.
Okay. So then what you do there is, I don't have my keys open. What you do there is you would go to your actual colors and make that a bit transparent.
All right. So there is just, it's basically part of the symbology. You can just click through.
It is, yeah, it's part of symbology. So when you're changing your colors, that's where you change it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I think we have one or two more questions, and one more question for Sozi is there a way to get the API data into an attribute table? I'm not too sure what that's about, but it's a question.
Oh yes, no, because at least not from my experience, you can't get the API data in an attribute table unless you download it from OSM has some really good data. If you are looking for attribute table data that you can then put onto a map and use it in your API if you are looking for attribute data.
Okay. And then one last thing: is it possible to cluster points by other polygon layers to force not collapse points within polygons?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Is it possible to cluster points by other polygon layers, and then to not force the collapse of points within the polygons? I'm not too. Yeah, it's not clear in the last part of the question.
Okay. Is it possible to cluster by polygon? I would assume so.
Cluster points. Cluster points by other polygon layers.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there does seem to be an answer in the questions for that one. It does appear to be possible, so that's a win.
Okay, that's all good.
Okay. And sorry, the second part of that question?
I'm not too sure. I think it's been answered. Don't worry.
Okay.
In the chat.
Okay.
Is that the last of the questions? Is there anything else out there?
Sorry. There's been one more thing. It's been clarified actually. So it's to force to keep the numbers in distinct polygons.
Can you please repeat that? Sorry, I didn't hear you properly.
Well, one of the comments to be clarified. So, is it possible to cluster points, which you've answered, but then it's not to force? I think it's to keep the numbers within the distinct class. Actually, I'm not too sure. Actually, the question it's a bit.
So maybe I can jump in. I think what they're trying to ask is they want to do clustering, but they don't want to cluster to contain points from outside of the polygon that it's in. So if you imagine you've got Gauteng, crime, and KwaZulu-Natal crime, or something, two provinces next to each other. You want to create clusters, but you don't want the clusters to contain points from across two different polygons.
Oh, okay, definitely, you can do that. So in the analysis tools in QGIS, you can run an analysis of a count and count within a certain polygon. So you can restrict your count that you use. So it's under vector analysis tools in QGIS.
Okay.
And maybe just a comment about Chris's original question about the scales on the heat maps. I guess he maybe was referring back to a session we had last week where we were talking about heat maps as well. And I was saying that heat maps can be also quite misleading. Like if you look at that that map that you had of Europe, where everything's bright white, but at the scale that you're looking at, it looks like, what is that heat map showing? Crime or whatever. It looks like, sorry, what was it?
Health sites.
Health sites. So it looks like everywhere you go in that wide area, you've got a health site right on your doorstep. But in fact, if you start to zoom in, you'll find that the heat map sort of changes, and the rural areas still don't have any health sites near them, and the towns have lots of them and what have you. So they can create a bit of a misleading view of the data in your map, depending, if the scale is such that the whole area is just covered by a bright part of the heat map.
I think then that's about it with regards to questions. I think other questions have been answered within the chat, so I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's lots of chat going on. I think a lot of people are really interested in the work that you're doing and how you're visualizing your data, because it is very effective. And we'd like to thank you, Azile, for coming and showing us what you're up to. And it's really cool just because we've had such a diverse range of people coming and talking from all over the world. It's just really cool to see what's happening in Pretoria and in South Africa. And it's been great to have you and have you talk us through what you're up to.
Thank you very much for having me.
Rock on, South Africa. Nice to see all South African talks today.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the stream. There's a little break now, and our next session will start in about an hour or so.
Thank you. Bye-bye.